They thought I was just the invisible middle-aged woman who managed the printers and patched their leaky pipes. They were wrong. For 21 years, I held this multi-million-dollar corporation together with duct tape and caffeine. The moment they slid that severance folder across the table, they thought they were getting rid of a problem. But what they really did was hand me the keys to their entire physical existence. And the eviction notice? I taped it to their CEO's door myself. Welcome to Karma Chronicles, your ultimate destination for thrilling revenge stories, where corporate hubris always meets its match. Why, for the love of God, was the CEO's top-of-the-line Italian espresso machine shrieking like a condemned soul again? I mumbled the question to the dust bunnies and the cold metal of the server rack, crawling into the cramped space beneath the Eastern Wing's HVAC unit. I had a 2-day-old energy bar in my coat pocket and a flashlight clenched between my teeth. And that damn espresso machine, a pretentious behemoth Wallace Altman insisted on calling the Siren, was wired directly into the same ancient breaker that powered the air handling for this entire floor. I'd only discovered that suicidal wiring setup years ago during the notorious latte-induced power outage of 2011. Nobody else knew that, of course. Nobody in this sleek glass and steel monstrosity they called Luminous Solutions ever documented anything that mattered. Their official files were pristine, but their actual infrastructure was a house of cards held up by forgotten favors and undocumented fixes. I knew it all, because I remember everything. That morning had started like every other for the last 21 years. Me, Eleanor Maeve Hastings, unlocking the heavy, custom-designed office door at 6:47 a.m., exactly 23 minutes before official open. I still used the original brass key they'd given me back in 2002. I took pride in oiling that key and that lock twice a year. You would be absolutely shocked at how many high-level executives assume a squeaking lock is a broken lock and just leave the company vulnerable. It spoke volumes about their attention span. The cleaning crew, bless their weary hearts, had managed to leave a glob of chewing gum stuck to the stainless steel prep sink again. And someone from the product team, likely the perpetually confused intern, had abandoned a container of forgotten Thai leftovers in the mini-fridge over the weekend. The resulting smell was a bioweapon, a combination of fermented fish sauce and exploded kombucha. It wasn't my job, not technically. My contract, signed 21 years ago when the company was just a glimmer in a college dropout's eye, listed me as Operations and Facilities Coordinator. But guess who was the one scraping dried seaweed off a smart fridge with a laminated office calendar and a rusty plastic spatula? This gal. Some days I truly felt like the human embodiment of duct tape. I held everything together, the systems, the morale, the leaky plumbing, in total, utter silence. I was only ever noticed when something broke. Wallace Altman, the current CEO, likely still thought I was the receptionist. My business card, which I rarely handed out, stated Facilities Manager, Senior Ops, and Head of Vendor Relations. My inbox contained 3,200 unread urgent emails from people who couldn't manage to replace a toner cartridge without calling their mothers. The slow creep of disrespect turned into a torrent when they brought in the new HR director, Brittany. Fresh out of her master's program, all synthetic smiles and corporate jargon, she once asked me, with a straight face, where the Ethernet plug went. "Sweetheart," I told her, without raising my eyes from the server box, "it goes in the wall. The same place your job performance is headed if you don't learn how to read a network schematic." She didn't laugh. She just stiffened and walked away, her expensive heels clicking a tune of entitlement. I didn't have a fancy degree from an Ivy League school. I didn't wear tailored blazers that cost more than my mortgage payment. But I knew that building, not in the way a property manager knows a checklist. I knew it the way you know an old house, or an aging, beloved dog. I knew which pipes moaned right before a rainstorm, which thermostat would short out if the humidity crept past 70%, where the fuse box creaked like a haunted asylum dollhouse if you opened it too fast. I had kept that company breathing through 3 power surges, 2 major pipe bursts, and 4 CEOs worth of profoundly stupid financial decisions, and in return they simply forgot. No formal recognition, no genuine bonus, never a handwritten note from the board thanking me for saving their quarterly numbers after a server meltdown. The one time I did receive recognition was after I stayed up until 3 a.m. to personally unclog the executive women's restroom. Don't ask. The old VP of Finance handed me a half-eaten protein bar and said, "You're a saint, Mildred. My name is Eleanor." But at some point in year 15, I stopped correcting them. I wasn't doing it for the recognition anymore. I just had a deep, almost spiritual belief in doing things right. The lease. The lease. The one that let us squat on prime downtown Boston real estate for a fraction of the current market rate. I negotiated that 2 decades ago, back when Luminos was just 5 people, a cheap fax machine, and a lot of empty promises. The original founder, Richard, sat across from me at a sticky vinyl booth at a rundown diner and asked if I would co-sign the commercial lease. I scoffed. I didn't co-sign. I put the entire damn lease under my name. Nobody else had the credit or the guts back then. I didn't mind. They were like family. But, as with most families, they eventually forgot who was holding the walls up. I had become the human equivalent of the background hum, invisible until the AC quit. Then, suddenly, I was Queen Eleanor, savior of summer sweat. So I kept showing up, quiet, competent, unshakable. Then came that Monday. I knew what was coming before the email even arrived. HR sent an all-staff email announcing strategic realignment opportunities, which, translated from HREs, is the corporate equivalent of a mob boss whispering, "We need you to take a ride with us." My gut went cold. I'd seen enough executives cry into their sparkling water during layoffs to know the signs. I was next. But I wasn't going to cry. I had already begun mentally pulling a checklist of every undocumented liability and loose thread I had managed over the years. This time, I wasn't going to clean up their mess. I was going to leverage it. The meeting invitation landed at 4:58 p.m., just as I was scraping a dried-up piece of avocado toast off the break room countertop. Subject line, quick sync, HR. No context, no warning, just a calendar event plopped onto my perfectly organized day like a turd in a punch bowl. I walked into the office the next morning, punctual as the sunrise. I wore my gray, threadbare cardigan, the one with a hole in the elbow and a coffee stain shaped vaguely like the state of Delaware. That cardigan was my armor. It had seen 3 CEOs, a minor electrical fire, and a surprise baby shower that ended in a bitter divorce months later. It was a witness to my legacy. Brittany from HR was already seated in Conference Room B. She smiled the saccharine smile of a Lifetime movie stepmom. Next to her was Mr. Silas, a lawyer from their outside counsel, slick hair, slicker shoes, and a leather folder he wouldn't stop stroking, like it contained the Declaration of Independence. "Eleanor, thank you for coming in," Brittany chirped, her voice 2 decibels too high. "We wanted to have a little restructuring conversation." That word, restructuring, hit harder than a sack of bricks. I had translated it for others, held their trembling hands, and covered their shifts after. I knew the rhythm by heart. First the fake smile, then the folder, then the apology that wasn't really an apology. "We're going in a new direction," she said. I stared at her. That new direction wouldn't happen to include me heading right out the door, would it? Silence. Then a slow, gentle push of the folder across the polished mahogany table. Inside, a generic severance package, 3 months' pay, a draconian NDA clause, and health insurance until the end of the month. How generous. The dismissal letter didn't even get my title right. It called me Eleanor J. Hawkins Waite, 21 years of service, and they still couldn't spell my name correctly. "We're asking for your badge and all company keys today," the lawyer, Mr. Silas, added in a clinical monotone. "Also, any company property in your possession." I took a breath that could have cracked the drywall. I reached into my shoulder bag and placed my building access badge on the table like a discarded poker chip. Next, the keys. All 11 of them, labeled meticulously in my handwriting from 2002. They were the originals, back when I used to stay late to reprogram the door locks myself. "Are you absolutely sure?" I asked, my eyes locked on Brittany. "This is your last chance." She blinked, giving me the standard HR sympathetic face, bland, empty, fake as margarine. "It's not personal, Eleanor." "Sure it ain't," I muttered, standing up. My body felt suddenly light, unburdened by 2 decades of corporate sludge. "Just remember this: you can't fire what you never understood." I walked out before I could set the building on fire with my stare. The late afternoon sun felt sharp on my skin. The sidewalk buzzed with the rush of commuter noise, but I was utterly numb. I didn't cry. Not in front of them, not after 21 years of cleaning their messes, calming their interns' panic attacks, and fixing their machines. They wanted to forget me, fine, but they had forgotten too much. I didn't drive straight home. I pulled into a Dunkin' lot, turned off the AC, and called Marcus. Marcus was my old neighbor's son. I used to pay him $20 to mow my lawn. Now he was a real estate lawyer with a nervous tic when anyone mentioned litigation. He picked up on the second ring. "Eleanor, everything okay? You sound calm." "No," I said, leaning my head back against the vinyl headrest. "But it's about to be. You remember that commercial lease we drew up for Luminos back in '02? A pause, then a low, slow whistle. "Oh, that lease. Yes, I do. Tell me, do they know?" I smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the dangerous, predatory smile of a shark finding blood in the water. "They just asked for the keys, Marcus, so I think it's time I gave them everything they asked for." My house smelled like lemon pledge and old war movies, my method for staying sane. I dropped my coat by the door, kicked off my practical orthopedic shoes, and walked straight to the hallway closet. Inside was my "in case they try something stupid" file. I never thought I'd actually open it. The folder was hot pink, labeled in black Sharpie. Lease 2002, Eleanor only. I pulled it out with the surgical precision one would use to disarm a landmine. Inside lay the original lease agreement, 7 intricate amendments, a receipt for the atrocious orange rug I bought for the lobby before we could afford decent furniture, and 3 post-it notes with crayon doodles from the founder's kid. 21 years ago, Luminos couldn't secure a lease if their lives depended on it. No credit, no revenue, and a fax line that sounded like a dying raccoon. The founder, Richard, had practically begged me, "Eleanor, if you don't co-sign, we'll be working out of my wife's garage. She'll kill me." I didn't co-sign. I signed the whole damn thing myself. "Just until we get on our feet," he'd promised. We never had that conversation again. After that, it was always me who renewed the lease, me who negotiated with the property manager, me who coordinated the specialized HVAC installs, the new carpet, and investigated the weird smell that turned out to be a dead squirrel inside the insulation. They never took my name off the lease. They never even asked. I sat at my kitchen table, cracked open a cold Diet Dr. Pepper, and started reading the fine print like my entire future was buried in the legal jargon. Page 12, Section 9B. Renewal of lease term shall require written notice from the lessee no later than 30 days prior to expiration. I blinked, read it again. Then I checked the expiration date on the original document, August 1st. Today was August 3rd. 2 days too late. They hadn't renewed. They hadn't even sent a courtesy email. Not a peep from their new legal counsel. Not a word from Brittany. They were so busy congratulating themselves on strategic realignment and playing musical chairs with executive titles that they had missed the single most important deadline in the company's physical existence. I leaned back in my chair. A long, slow, utterly satisfying grin crawled across my face. It was the smile of a woman who realizes the universe just handed her a loaded weapon. It wasn't just that they fired me, it was how they fired me, like I was a smudge on a window, like I was some disposable middle-aged inconvenience with a binder full of obsolete trivia. But my trivia ran the damn building. They forgot I was still the lessee of record, the legal tenant. And now, Luminous Solutions, with their high-tech espresso machine and their 7-figure valuation, were nothing more than squatters. Part 4. The Silence Before the Storm. I quickly scrolled through my old files. The building's liability insurance policy. Still in my name since I set it up in '03, the HVAC maintenance contract, renewed last year under my direct email, the utilities, still routed through a unique business account I opened with the city back in 2005. Everything that mattered still ran through Eleanor Hastings. I could warn them. I could send an email. Subject: "Hey, forgot something." But that's not what they would have done to me. If the shoe was on the other foot, they'd be halfway through replacing me with a younger model who has to Google circuit panel reset. So I closed the folder. I poured another Dr. Pepper. And I decided, for the first time in 2 decades, to shut the hell up. Let them enjoy the silence. Let them feel the ground disappear when they walked off the edge. Let the sirens hissing be their first clue, because now they were trespassing, and I had the paperwork to prove it. I wore my best, loudest church shoes to the meeting with Greg, the property manager. I wanted the world to hear me coming. Greg looked up from his monitor, surprised. He always smelled faintly of copper toner and had 17 different colored highlighters on his desk for no discernible reason. "Eleanor," he said, "didn't think I'd see you back here." I smiled. "Let's just say I'm here in a legacy capacity." I sat down, pulled out my pink folder, and handed him the entire lease packet. Original, amendments, all pristine. "I want to confirm something, Greg. There was no written renewal request submitted by July 1st, correct?" He started clicking away at his keyboard like it owed him money. No, not from Luminous. Nothing logged in the system. I assumed they were going month to month while they worked out a new, bigger deal." I nodded, calm as a tombstone. "Good. That tracks. Because under Clause 9B, if no notice is received, it converts to month tenancy." Greg leaned back. His chair creaked. "Technically, yes, that's correct." I pulled a third paper from my bag, crisp, thick stock, with a professional letterhead I had a graphic designer friend whip up. "I'd like to formally notify you of a lease termination, effective in 30 days. His eyebrows shot up so high I thought they'd need a workers' comp claim. "Wait, you're terminating it?" "Yup. As the lessee of record, they missed the renewal window, and I've already lined up a replacement tenant." He swallowed hard, looking genuinely frightened. "Do they know?" "They will." The new tenant was a trendy wellness startup called Bloom Pulse, all green juice and artisanal air purifiers. Their founder, whom I met at a farmer's market while haggling over a bunch of beets, offered 3 times what Luminous was paying. They were desperate for downtown square footage to install their Himalayan salt wall and kombucha taps. "This is going to be messy, Eleanor," Greg warned. "Messy," I said, standing. "Was what they gave me after 2 decades of loyalty." I left before he could ask another question. Back home, I opened a legal template on my laptop and filled in the blanks. Plaintiff, Eleanor Maeve Hastings. Defendant, Luminous Solutions, current occupant, Suite 201-221. Reason for eviction, failure to renew lease, material breach, and illegal subletting. I'd found out they rented a back office to some crypto consultant without ever telling me. Another little oversight. I filed it online through the county portal and paid extra to expedite the service. The confirmation email hit my inbox with a delightful little ding that made me feel younger than any amount of Botox ever could. Then, like clockwork, Brittany emailed me. Subject, request confirmation of returned property. I clicked reply all, because I knew Brittany liked to CC half the company to make herself look busy. My response was simple. Yes, including the ones you forgot I had. 2 mornings later, I stood in my sunroom, watering my peace lily, holding the certified letter. Heavy envelope, real ink signature, stamped with county court markings. Plaintiff, Eleanor Maeve Hastings. Defendant, Luminous Solutions. Subject, notice of termination and demand to vacate premises. My name in bold, right at the top. It felt surreal, like seeing your own obituary while sipping coffee. Except instead of death, it was a resurrection. A resurrection in comfortable sweatpants and orthopedic slippers, but a resurrection nonetheless. Across town, the very same envelope landed at Luminos reception around 9:13 a.m. The receptionist that day was a temp with a glittery name tag reading Amber. She probably thought it was spam or junk mail. She tossed it in the recycling bin between a box of expired protein bars and a broken laminator. Meanwhile, upstairs, the leadership team was busy polishing their egos with IPO talks and branding refreshes. They were too busy swimming in their ambition soup to notice the tide pulling out. I sat on my couch rereading the notice. This wasn't just some HR slap fight anymore. This was a time bomb wrapped in bureaucracy and tied with a red tape bow. And I'd lit the fuse. My phone buzzed. It was Dan, the facilities guy who replaced the fluorescent ballast without whining about it. Hey, you okay? Something's weird around here. Front desk got a court notice, but nobody's talking. Place feels off. I texted back. I'm more than okay, Dan. I'm just finally being seen. The conference room at Marcus's firm smelled like burnt coffee and laminated ambition. Marcus slid the final lease transfer document across the table. All you gotta do is sign right there under outgoing lessee, and again on page 4. You still good with this? He asked, pen in hand. I looked down. Incoming tenant, Bloom Pulse, Inc. Effective date, August 31st, 1200 p.m. Sharp. Terms, 3 times the previous rent. No second thoughts, Eleanor? Only that I didn't do this sooner. The pen scraped across the page like a guillotine blade. 21 years of institutional memory officially transferred to a kombucha empire. Judge already approved the eviction, Marcus confirmed. You'll get notice of posting within 48 hours. They'll get 48 hours to vacate. No appeal, no wiggle room. You handed them the rope. They built the gallows. That evening, I drove downtown. I parked across the street from the building, killed the engine, and just watched. The lights were still burning in the executive suites. Wallace Altman was likely practicing his investor pitch with a glass of expensive scotch in one hand. They had no idea that tomorrow morning a county marshal would be taping a fluorescent orange notice to their glass doors. That in 48 hours, every whiteboard brainstorm, every ergonomic chair, every beanbag in the innovation zone would be loaded into a moving truck with Bloom Pulse waiting behind them, cash in hand, and eucalyptus diffusers ready. At exactly 8:03 a.m. the next day, Brittany strolled into the building. Almond milk latte in hand, beige pumps clicking like an applause track, only she could hear. By 8:08 a.m., she was standing in front of CEO Wallace Altman's office, with her jaw unhinged. A fluorescent orange eviction notice was laminated and zip-tied to the handle. Notice to vacate property and breach of lease, 48 hours. By 9:02 a.m., Altman's phone rang. It was Greg, the property manager. Mr. Altman, this is to confirm enforcement. You were notified via certified mail and email over 2 weeks ago. We received no response. We assumed your silence was intentional. By 10:15 a.m., the panic fully set in. Someone finally figured out who the plaintiff was. Brittany pulled up the ignored court documents. Plaintiff, Eleanor Maeve Hastings. Miranda, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. The chaos lasted all day. The local business blog posted a headline, Downtown Tech Firm Evicted Amid Lease Dispute. Insider hints at mismanagement meltdown. The call came in at 7:42 p.m. I was organizing my spice rack, alphabetical, of course. The screen lit up with the name I hadn't seen since the day he forgot mine at the Christmas party. Altman Wallace, CEO. I let it ring 3 times. Picked up on the 4th. Eleanor speaking. "What the hell is going on? You can't do this!" Wallace roared, his voice cracking like a panicked teenager. I put him on speaker, poured myself a glass of Cabernet, and leaned against the counter. "I absolutely can, Wallace, and I did. You read your lease. You're evicting an entire company. Do you have any idea what this looks like?" "Nathan," I cut him off, using his rarely heard first name.
"Let me stop you right there. You fired the person who held all the keys, building, legal, operational memory. You didn't even ask who signed the lease." "We assumed it was—" "That's the problem, Wallace," I said. "You assumed. About everything. About me. About what I was worth." There was a profound silence on the other end, punctuated by a wheezing breath. "You blindsided us," he finally snarled, trying to pivot into the role of victim. "No, Wallace," I corrected, swirling my wine. "I responded to being blindsided. I came prepared." I opened my email client. I drafted a new message to every executive, and just for spice, I CC'd Dan from facilities. Subject: company property as requested. Body: attached is the complete original lease agreement, including all amendments. As you requested confirmation that I returned all company documents, consider this fulfillment. I hit send while Altman was still breathing heavily into the receiver. "The board is going to—" "Oh, they'll do what they always do," I said. "Protect themselves. Maybe toss you to the wolves if they're hungry enough, but they won't call me because I have the paperwork, and Bloompulse has already wired the first 2 months' rent." That shut him up. The line stayed quiet for a few beats, then disconnected. I exhaled, feeling the weight of 2 decades slide off my shoulders like old paint during a thunderstorm. I didn't smile, didn't smirk, just felt the quiet satisfaction of closure. The building's new tenants were scheduled to begin moving in the following Monday. The old crew was evicted like a college frat house. I walked to the hallway closet. There, on the wall next to my family photos, hung a small brass hook. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the one thing I'd saved. No plaque, no fanfare, just metal and memory. The original office key. I hung it like a trophy. Not because it unlocked anything now, but because once it opened everything, and now it closed the chapter exactly how I wanted. Quietly, legally, permanently. Appreciate you sticking around for the corporate justice endgame, you legends of the break room. Subscribe to Karma Chronicles for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.